Okay, great. So we're going to start off here. The microphone is purely for the recording, so you don't have any amplification, so don't worry about that part. I won't blow your ears out. In any case, so I'd really like to welcome 4 guest speakers. They come from CH2M Hill. I've got Leslyn next to me. She works in wastewater. Let's see, Giuseppe, who works on water, on the opposite side of wastewater, shall we say? Yeah. Andrew, who works in transportation, and Natalie, who also works in transportation. And I think our plan will roughly be to do 2 presentations before the break. We'll take a 10-minute break and do 2 presentations after the break. During the presentation, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't wait till the very end. Just ask your question when you want. Please raise your hand, get some attention, and ask your question. I think it'll make things a little more interesting if we can ask questions during the presentation. So yeah, without further ado, I will let Leslyn take over. She's going to talk a little bit about CH2M Hill. And then I'll just give you a sneak peek. Natalie took some classes at City College and CSM, so really grill her on her GPA while she was doing that. And okay, I'm just joking. Don't do that. But, okay, well, let's give a big round of warm welcome, a big round of applause, please, guys.
I try to not. Okay.
We have a small problem.
Okay. Hi everyone. So I was gonna just spend a few minutes telling you what our company is about, CH2M Hill. So we're in the Bay Area. We have 3 offices: San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland. Natalie's from the Oakland office, and the other 3 of us are from San Francisco. So I'll tell you a little bit about the organization itself, and so that'll kind of help put in context what we're talking about and the projects we do, and then we'll jump into each of our practices. Okay. Well, I guess I don't need the slides to talk about it. So, is it okay if I just start and then we'll have to figure it out? So CH2M Hill, we're a global engineering firm. We are currently about 30,000 plus employees, operating in over 140 countries, I think, and almost about half or more of the employees are overseas. So we have a really great, when we say global, it's truly a global firm within in North America and all over the world. We do, the major markets that we focus on are water, wastewater, transportation, environmental services. Those are the 3 big ones. And then obviously we do other services as well: power, nuclear, chemicals, just facilities, pretty much, you know, the realm of engineering you can think of. We have our presence in most of those. Let's see. Hold on. I think I probably need my slides. So just speaking, I was going to talk a little bit about our industry rankings, just to give you a sense of the scale. So last year in 2013, we were industry leaders in clean water, sanitation, and in transportation. We're always on the top 5, along with the rest of our competitors in the industry, and that says a lot for the work that we do. And that is a little more technical focus. It's how well we do what we do. And then that's one picture of it. When you see the rankings in publications and stuff, there's specific criteria, and so we do well as far as, you know, the technical and all that goes. And the other part to a company is always about the people and the culture that it's made of. And we at CH2M Hill, we feel pretty proud about that. We love the people who we work with, and it speaks a lot when we get rankings like it's the world's most ethical company, it's one of the best workplaces to work for. And so those are the people component of it, and you kind of put those 2 together, and that makes our company really great, and we love working for it. And as you can see, today we're all young professionals, so we're not, we try to keep this relevant. We're all within, I'm just about 2+ years into CH, and so is Giuseppe, and Natalie and Andrew are definitely a little more experienced. So we'll speak to that a little bit, but we wanted to keep it relevant for you and ask questions, starting all the way from education to starting as an entry-level professional. Almost there? Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when there's rankings, I don't know too much about it. I'll check with these guys if they do. So say if it's purely by sector, so they take transportation, and then within that there's criteria of, just number of employees, number of professionally registered engineers, and so there could be criteria across many things. Some being purely technical, like professional engineering licenses, and all of those things count as purely technical. And then there's probably the revenue, yeah, the company's revenue, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so revenue is a big criteria, like how much you make. Even sometimes it's region focused, so in the Bay Area and then in North America and globally. So which projects in which countries are, making money. So those are kind of that one. And then there's the other surveys to do with, ethics. Obviously, it has its own, ethical criteria, and I know Hitesh says that you guys talk a lot about that. So it's very specific sometimes, so you kind of have to focus on what those rankings really are talking about, and then okay, I've through all of that. Let's see. And yeah, so CH is about in the $6+ billion revenues globally. And we're an employee-owned firm, so we're not a public company. Our employees own, the employees have stock in the company, and it's 100% employee-owned. So that speaks a lot for, how much we care about it and how much we invest in it. That's that. And so I was talking about, so this is sort of gives you the technical picture of it. We are, 1 and 2 and 3 in water and wastewater, and I'll talk about that. Natalie and Andrew will talk about the transportation side of the business. Yeah, so that's just about our company, put it in perspective. I'll go into my practice a little bit. So I'm originally from India. I studied all the way up to undergrad in India. I did it in, my engineering degree was in biotechnology. And I'm one of those persons, honestly, I wish I had a story that I knew I wanted to be an engineer when I was 10, but I'm not one of those. There were many days in my undergrad when I sat and I was like, what am I doing here? So I'm one of those, but the thought process through my undergrad and what brought me here was me being, I had the intellect and I was an A-grade student and all of that. And the Asian background or my upbringing, if you are that and it's only science is your track. And so that kind of drove me into engineering, which I don't regret. I love that I was doing that. But there was I say that I have the heart of a social worker. So basically through high school, I was very involved in community service projects through Rotary International. And so that was that other half of me that wanted a public service career, wanted to be a social worker. And so kind of had to reconcile the two while I was in engineering. And that brought me to the US pretty much. And I wanted to, with the background that I had in India where, you do hear about, these are the challenges in developing countries as well, where there is a shortage of clean water supply, there's a shortage of sanitation, and all of the repercussions that it does for the quality of life in those countries and communities. So that was my inspiration, and I really thought that that was my calling, and I had to reconcile that with engineering, and so that's what brought me to the U.S. and I did my graduate degree in environmental engineering, and I focused on water and wastewater treatment. During grad school, what brought me to the Bay Area is an internship at the Oceanside Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is by Lake Merced, and that was my first time being at a treatment plant. That was pretty much where reality sank in of what I was into. I got all of my groundwork and my foundation being there for 6 months, and my professional network kind of grew around the Bay Area, and when I graduated, I got hired into CH2M Hill, and I pretty much do what I was doing before, which is wastewater treatment. It's a little hard to understand what wastewater treatment or process engineers do without really knowing that side of the world. So I just want to get a quick show of hands of who here has ever been to a treatment plant or even know what happens, once you flush at your house. Yeah. Well, that's a good show of hands. It could be worse. So yeah, I just wanted the quickest tour that I can give you. I will do that just so that it puts it in context, and then I can talk a little bit about my project. So I will pick up what's the start of the pipe for me. Let's see. So that's pretty much at your businesses and in your homes. What's flushed is what's going to the treatment plant. So, and that we refer to as collection systems. So here in San Francisco, much of the older systems used to be designed that way, which is called a combined sanitary sewer, where it has your sewage as well as your rainwater or your stormwater. And so when both of them go into the same pipes, it's called a combined sewer, and that's San Francisco's. It has its challenges to treat that together, and so a lot of the newer cities and systems tend to be separate because each one can be treated, to different grades, and it's much more, it has much more advantages. But that's what the collection systems are. And once it gets into the pipe, yes. So we, the reality is overflows do happen, and it can be a lot of factors. It's just because these systems are built on, when the city really originated, so those systems are built at that point, and so there's a capacity to it and those things. So when you have a big storm or other situations, and the system cannot handle those flows, say for San Francisco, where if there's a big storm, they're both going into the same pipe. And so those are the challenges, and it happens. So, the trick is to, obviously manage those and not make it happen. So there are processes in place at the treatment plants for overflows not to happen. And so they're very rare. They're once or twice in a year sometimes, and it depends on the scale too. But it has to, you have to kind of have an outlet for it, if versus the pipes blowing up under them. Yeah. So San Francisco has a west and an east system. So the west side is what goes to the Oceanside Wastewater Treatment Plant by Lake Merced. So over there, if in those systems there's an overflow, it goes into the ocean. But it's not a direct overflow. It is stored. There's large underground storage cisterns that store the water, and then they kind of go through at least a preliminary, safe level treatment before it's kind of dumped into the ocean. And on the same on the east side, it goes to the southeast treatment plant. Almost 80% of San Francisco goes to the southeast treatment plant. And so the discharge from that end is into the bay. And so once it's in the systems, you have these spread throughout the city. You have pump stations which pump it depending on, you know, where the system is, east side, west side. It goes into the treatment plant. And the first step is screening, which is pretty much everything that's big enough to be caught will be caught first before it goes into the more sensitive processes. And this is like, you know, it's funny the things that you will see here. You know, there's been dead seals to beds to, it's the strangest things that you will hear about. And those are the reasons why, you know, people, when they say don't put so-and-so things in, you know, don't flush them down, there's like a real reason for it. And so because this is where we will see it. So that's the screening step, and after that it goes into a primary sedimentation. I'm sure you guys know what sedimentation is. It's a simple process where all of the solids settle down and the liquid kind of goes from the top. So this is what that looks like. And then the liquid kind of moves through what is the heart of the process, which is called, it's a biological process. So this is where we have microorganisms, who we simply call bugs, which treat the water. It's held there for, you know, a sufficient amount of time based on design, and it pretty much, you know, cleans the water up in this process. And this is the most sensitive part of the treatment plant. And so the other story of not to flush down your pharmaceuticals and other, you know, mercury and those very minute toxic chemicals down your toilet is because of this, because the bugs are the most sensitive and they're toxic. And once this is down, then the treatment process is down and really hard to start up again. And moving from there, it actually goes into a secondary treatment, which is now post this. There's again a separation, and then you actually have truly secondary treated water, which is, you know, which is safe for disposal. The more wastewater treatment has progressed a lot, like since the Clean Water, you know, Clean Water Act kicked in the early 70s, people were just doing primary treatment, what I talked about, and then they mandated secondary treatment. So that's what's referred to as safe treatment as of now. But then it has progressed a lot where, for reasons of water shortage, another recycled water being a hot topic. So wastewater treatment plants are actually taking that secondary effluent, what we call it, and taking it through advanced treatment, which is pretty much, which is disinfection. And so when you disinfect it, it becomes more valuable than just discharging it, where you can use it for reclaimed uses.
We have a study here relying on people to comply with not flushing down hospitals. I don't know what about it, but how do you deal with people?
Well, it's every city manages it differently. A lot of those are public outreach. A big component of things that are beyond our control, like the boundary that I talk about, is public outreach. And so there are programs which are voluntary, like, you know, a pharmaceuticals program citywide, which puts in place collection facilities or processes in place where it makes it easy for the user to dispose of their pharmaceuticals and other things. So it's the city putting things in place for it to be easy enough so that public actually, even though it's voluntary, that it is easy enough so that it can do it and, you know, sort of do their contribution to you know, the treatment that they don't really see happen. So so we have, you know, the treatment process isn't, you know, we're not going to completely trust that everyone does the right thing. So there's processes in place that will take care, you know, all the way from the start till it gets to where it is. There's processes in place to detect those and you know, isolate it before it hits it. So every now and then there's an upset, of course, but for the most part there will be processes in place at the treatment plant and collection systems too. Even before it gets to the plant, there's a lot of processes in place that there can be isolations when you know there's contamination. Yeah, and so a lot of treatment plants, this is obviously a little more energy and money intensive, so cities who do want to have a large scale recycled water program will go ahead and incorporate advanced treatment of their wastewater treatment plants. So this is the Oceanside treatment plant that I worked at that I was telling you about. This is by Lake Merced, and once it does secondary treatment. It doesn't do the advanced treatment. It does secondary, and then it discharges into the ocean. And it doesn't disinfect simply because the cold and the salinity of the ocean sort of takes care of it from then on, so it doesn't really need disinfection. Those are digesters. So everything that's settled now, so you have the liquid stream that goes up, everything that's solids in there, which we know what it is, kind of goes into a process called digestion. And it's pretty much mimicking what happens in the human body as it's just broken down, you know, and so, and it's sterilized and made safe before it's hauled off. So by the solids that's left from the entire treatment process is finally, the most basic level is to send it to a landfill once it's safe. But then again, there's a lot of the hot topics being even the solids can be reused, and there's a lot of potential there for energy. So if you do what's called combined heat and power for digestion, you can actually recover, you can create heat and energy, heat and power from the solids. And so these are kind of the hot topics in wastewater right now that's trending, and it's really getting more and more advanced, where treatment plants are not looked upon as, you know, just, I don't know, whatever it is that people think about wastewater treatment, but it's trending more towards becoming, you know, energy and resource centers. That's my spiel on the wastewater treatment plant, just so that you'll know what goes on, you know, once you flush and it goes to the environment. So that's that space that's in between. Obviously, engineering is on the top of my list. We do want to, you know, promote that there's a lot of opportunities in these unconventional engineering fields too, like wastewater and water, which are not necessarily always thought about for engineering, but there's a lot of opportunities there no matter which track you take, be it structural, mechanical, electrical. Even though you take all of those, you can be a part of an industry that, like wastewater or, you know, other unconventional engineering fields, which have these multidisciplinary engineering teams. So that's what I wanted to kind of focus over there. And then, in case you don't do engineering, which we hope you do, but still science-focused, there's a lot of other tracks and opportunities within the same industry. So specifically in water and wastewater, you can be a part of operations and maintenance. It can be a lot of the big cities and plants have their own bio and chemistry departments. Environmental compliance, which is to do everything with the treatment plant complying to permits and in the, you know, once it gets out. Because a lot of pretty much everything that we do is compliance driven. It is to save the waters as far as this one's concerned. So there's a lot of opportunities within just this one industry. Quickly about what I do. So I'm right now into my 2+ years with CH, and as an entry-level engineer, junior engineer, my world is like right now in this zone, which is preliminary planning and design. And so as far as facilities go, be it water or wastewater infrastructure, for a junior engineer, you'll be supporting work that does that. And then it's a lot of different things. Sometimes it's just troubleshooting of these. Like you said, there's situations, emergency situations. So it's a lot about troubleshooting and responding to problems. Sometimes it's retrofit and upgrades. Like I said, a lot of the challenge with water, wastewater is it's age-old infrastructure. It starts when a new city starts, and the design life is typically 20 to 30 years, what we design for. But when you push that life 50+ years, it's old. And so a lot of it, just while it's running 24/7, just needs replacement. It needs upgrades. So a lot of what we do is doing that, and that's challenging. And obviously, the fun stuff sometimes is just when it's a brand new facility and you kind of get to build it from scratch. That's it's a fun project to have. But it's, again, water, wastewater, there's not so many of those where you get to have a brand new facility coming up all the time. That's that solid part I talked about. So pretty much what you refer to as waste is all of the solid streams that come from the primary sedimentation, from the secondary. It all goes into digestion. And what's left after digestion, which is safe for public health and environment, it goes to, depending on there's different levels of treatment even for the solids. So if it's the lowest level of treatment, it'll go to a landfill. If it's the next level, which we call Class B, it can go into a few other uses, and Class A, which is the best for reusing it, and it can actually go into agriculture, like land application and other better reuse for that. So that's, I'm sorry? It's all, by that time, it's completely sterilized, which is why we use it for, agricultural applications and stuff. Like the digestion process, which is 15 to almost 30 days, it is to make sure that it's absolutely low levels of pathogens, toxins, and everything. So it's a Class A, which is a very sterile product.
Initially, one of their first customers was the big winner of all the time.
Yeah, so if that's the end use, then you make sure that you have processes at the treatment plant or elsewhere that will get it to that grade. And so as far as innovation and advancement in wastewater treatment goes, which is, it is all of this. How can you reuse and reclaim the water, so that and then how can you reuse the solids? So those are the two big potentials where we get innovative. Well, they have, so I'm working on, let me have that project. I can go back. Well, okay. So I'm working on a project at the Oceanside plant, which currently does Class B biosolids, and we designed a process which will make it go Class A because they want to reuse their biosolids for agriculture and stuff like that. So Class B, I don't know what the percentage is. It's pretty much like everything that it generates, right? It's some, thousands of tons or whatever it is. But once this goes in 2 or 3 years, once this is operational, it's going to be Class A, and all of it is going to be beneficially reused. So I don't have an exact number for you, but we're doing it at Oceanside, and I'll talk about the other plant, which is also trending the same way. And I just wanted to give you a few examples of cool Bay Area projects that I've been a part of. Hi. So for collection systems, it's all underground. That's like the biggest thing. It's all underground. It's under the cities, and it's miles and miles of pipeline. So that's a big challenge. Isolating when there's overflows and other stuff, isolating the problem and then actually fixing it when it is underground. As far as the collection systems goes, and at the treatment plants, like I said, it's running 24/7. It needs to run 24/7. So when you have issues, there's only a certain buffer of time, like 8 hours, 16 hours, 24. There's only a buffer of time when you can store all of the wastewater that's coming in those large cisterns before you can fix the problem and send it through again, because this is how much capacity. And so it's making sure that everything's running 24/7 while you're trying to be it troubleshoot or upgrade a process or build new ones. If you don't have an open plot of land that you're building new facilities, which is rarely the case, you have to build it on the existing footprint. So it's all of those challenges and trying to sequence the construction where everything is working seamlessly. So this is just an aerial of the San Francisco International Airport treatment plant. They have both their sanitary and industrial waste going into this treatment plant. It's a small one, and we planned and designed upgrades to the industrial one, and this is just the site layout of all the new facilities, and it's currently under design and construction. And this one's special to me because it was the first design sheet that had my initial. So I'm proud of that one. And then currently, my world is made up of these two. Palo Alto has a really big regional water quality control plant that they take. Palo Alto's and all of the other few local regions all goes to that plant, and they're planning for, they're the only one of two wastewater treatment plants in the Bay Area which still incinerate, which is a much ancient technology, and so they want to upgrade to, make use of their energy and resources. So and this is, like I said, an example of brand new facilities which are really good projects for a career where you're a part of it right from the beginning, picking treatment processes, putting it on the plot, and everything. So that's super fun to do. And this is our big one. Giuseppe and I are both on it, so he'll talk a little more about it too. This is the East Side plan that I was talking about in San Francisco. This is in the Bayview district, and their treatment plan, or the solids, everything that's solids related I talked about, is that plant was built in the early 50s, and so that whole processes haven't been upgraded since then. So it's definitely pushing the life, and so they're planning for all brand new biosolids treatment facilities. So we just about kicked that off last year, and we're planning, and this is brand new stuff. We've just laid out the facilities, and we're looking at a whole bunch of alternatives for what's best for the plant, what's best for the city. And once and this is a practice that you do just to make sure that whatever you've designed fits before you go any further. If it doesn't fit, you kind of go back to the drawing board. And so that's what we do with site layouts. And this is the thing about wastewater treatment or other big infrastructure projects is it requires a lot of patience. It's not instant gratification. Our projects they get built only, so both of these, if all goes well, will be built and standing tall in 2022. And so I'll be 8 years older, and so it's long term, and so you kind of have to, it's a process that you're part of. It's not all instant gratification, and then you're planning for 10, 20-year projects. So it's exciting. I always say that it's great that I'm part of all these because, I love driving through the Bay Area and pointing out to things that I'm a part of and I'm building, and one day they will be built, and so that's the exciting part of my job. I think that's all that I had. I'll let you, if you have any questions, and I'll let Giuseppe transition. Thank you.
Hello? Perfect. All right, guys, like you said, I'm Giuseppe. I've worked for CH for almost 2 years now. I'm going to give a quick background on myself, and then I'll go over 3 projects that I've worked on that are pretty cool since being at CH. I graduated from De La Salle High School across the Bay in 2008, went to undergrad at San Diego State, where I got a degree in environmental engineering, and then just got my EIT a little over a year ago. So you can see I have a little schematic at the top. I wanted to point that out because I believe my time in college was very significant to getting a job here. I don't know if any of you are part of ASC or Chi Epsilon or anything like that, but about every interview I've had, people have asked me about ASC or Chi Epsilon or EWB or something, and actually my interview at CH, more than half of it was about my time at ASC. So if you're not involved with it, try to get involved with it. It's a lot of fun, and it definitely helps network. And then I had 2 internships one at Dock and Engineering, a small transportation firm in San Diego, and CH before I got hired full-time in February. Yeah.
Are you talking about with that?
American Society of Civil Engineers.
When you're talking about ASU, that's the Professional Engineering Society. I did not belong to the and I have to say, I'm slightly disappointed on all of you, only 8 of you have joined the Engineering Society. I'm offering this as a big extra like a bonus out there. You can run into 3 of the students, some are 20, some are 30 bucks. And I know that at this point you simply just join the organization. You start to get more informed about what's going on. And once you transfer it, you need to do what's exactly get involved in engage. Like you pointed out, I've had guests up here time after time, but it's just the Engineering Society is very sophisticated.
Yeah. No, he's totally right. It's definitely get involved. There's no reason not to be. You meet different people too, so it's not all just work. It's a little bit of fun. So CH is such a big global company that you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you just express interest. So I don't have a specific specialty. I've done a little bit of everything since I've been here. So I'm going to do a little bit on hydraulic modeling, a little bit on groundwater, and I'm going to talk about the project Leslie just mentioned at the Southeast plant. So my first project here is a hydraulic modeling project we did in Washington. So we were basically asked to model bacteria transport for a mill who was getting complaints about a large concentration of bacteria in a shellfish bed nearby. And they're getting fined tons and tons of money. So we basically built this model, and for those of you who don't know what a hydraulic model is, it's basically using a numeric computer model to simulate a river, or in this case a river and a tide. So what we did was put together this model and basically tried to show that they're not causing a problem. And so here's your process to creating a model. You want to develop your boundary, which is not just your physical area, but also your different boundary conditions like precipitation, rain, tides, everything like that. And then you're going to put in your inputs, and in this case is bacteria. And then you're going to calibrate your model, validate it, analyze it, give the client a report. So as I just discussed, it was in Washington. This area was pretty interesting because they had both tidal influence, because it was on a bay, and they had rivers. So Washington gets so much rain that we had to account for both. This is what our model boundary looks like. So you can see right there is where the mill is, and down here is where the shellfish beds are. So that was kind of what we were working with. This is just an example of what tides look like. I'm sure you're all familiar. Ebb tide is when the flow is going out, flood is when it's coming in, so you can see the diurnal cycle right there. And this is our flow. So these are what we were putting into the model to build the boundary conditions. So once we built the model, we calibrated it, and there was a lot of factors that made this pretty difficult. Basically, bacteria, as you know, it dies off pretty quickly, so we had to account for this die-off. We had these random storm events that would come in and just flush the whole system, so it would minimize the concentrations, and it was hard to kind of account for those. And then the tides, I mean, they're pretty regular to predict, but they're coming in and out and making it a very dynamic system. And then, that's about it. No, and those storm conditions also caused a really rapid transportation of bacteria. So this is kind of what it looks like. Over here is where it starts out. Bacteria decreases as it goes towards the shellfish beds. So what we're trying to prove here is that as it has enough space basically right here, this is distance, to die off, and by the time it gets to the shellfish beds, there's not enough concentration to cause those shellfish beds to shut down. And the project's completed. We built this model, we validated it, calibrated it, analyzed all the output, and developed the report for our client. So for that, we use a software called RMA. It's a numeric model. I'm not all that familiar with that model, but we also use SMS, which is Surface Modeling Solutions, I believe, as our interface. So that picture you saw, right here. There we go back. Anyway, that picture I showed of the model boundary was, that was SMS. So I need to change it on here. That. Go ahead. This project was a little while ago, so I'm trying to recall. It was coming, I know it was coming from the mill, and they would have random times where they would have huge, like, flush of the bacteria out. And I don't know, like, what exactly causes them to flush it all out at one time, but that was basically what was causing a huge dump of bacteria into their rivers. So it's so cool. Yeah. Okay. SMS is a pretty big, yeah, that's your basic like interface model, and then there's other programs, what I was telling him, RMA is a good one. HECRAS is probably the most common. I'm not too familiar with the program, but that's a really common open hydraulic modeling program. And then actually GIS does a little bit of modeling now. So, all right. So the second project I worked on was a well drilling project in San Diego. I know it's spring break, so if any of you are going down there, go check it out. So basically we were designing an advanced water treatment plant for a marine base in San Diego. And they have, when you put something through a membrane system, you're going to get a product, which is really clean water, and you're going to get a byproduct, which is a super salty brine. And the problem with that is that you can't just dump brine anywhere you want. So what they decided to do is inject it into the groundwater system. And this sits basically right on the ocean. So the only reason they can do that is because the groundwater system is influenced by the tides in the ocean right there. So it's already pretty salty. So it's not going to cause any major impacts on environment. So what is exploratory well drilling? Basically, we don't know what's underground. So we're going to go ahead and stick a large tube down there and figure it out. So what we did was hire a drilling company to bring in this huge auger drill and drill about 1,000 feet down. And what we're looking for is the different soils and the lithology as you go down. Where the groundwater aquifers were. Yep, we're just drilling one. This was basically like your test subject before you go in and drill a bunch of these. So the plan is to drill, I think, like 8. And they're going to be, you're just going to inject that brine right into the hole. So we basically were looking for the geology in there. We were looking to find where the aquifers were. And we were trying to figure out how much tidal influence they had and the water quality to ensure that we could go ahead and inject this brine solution. So this is your auger drill right here. And this was us playing with dirt. So the way you characterize the geology is you go through these bags of sand and just different rocks and different types that get pumped out. Go ahead. Maybe like it's not big, maybe like a 1 to 2 foot radius. It's relatively small, it's just like that big maybe. But as they drill, they pump out all this rock and fluid and all this stuff, and we basically go through those bags at different sections of 5-foot intervals as they go down and characterize what's in there. So we might say it's sandy, or it's rocky, it's gravelly, different things like that. And you basically come up with this big, huge, long list of how the hole looks as you go down. This is our tidal analysis we did. So you can pull this stuff off like NOAA, any spot that does oceanography or oceanography type stuff. And we're basically trying to look for how the groundwater system moves with the tide. So as the tide comes in, your groundwater levels go up a little bit. As it pulls out, your groundwater levels go down. So you can see right here, these are our points on water levels in the wells we had. this dotted line is those tides. You can see it's lagging just a little bit, but we proved that it was influenced by the tides. This project is still going on. We completed the well, exploratory well, although it did collapse, unfortunately, but it's not uncommon for that to happen. We chose not to stabilize it because of the drilling method we were using. And it's currently going into its construction stages soon. Last project I have here. So Leslie kind of touched on it earlier. We're doing the Southeast Biosolids project. I'm specifically a part of the odor control team. So we're kind of going all over the place here right now. But what our goal in this project is because it's in a residential area, like literally outside the fence, there's homes. So these people are smelling any types of odors coming from this plant, and they're complaining. So our goal is to go in there and minimize the amount of odor that escapes so that residents can live a smell-free life. And we're going to do that through sampling, developing a model, and then designing treatment systems. So the best part of it was going out there and sampling all these horrible, horrible smells. We got to go to every different type of treatment process and go in there and sample it, live in it for about 3 days. And then those samples are shipped off to the lab. So this is us sampling. This is a coworker. That's myself. This is actually a treatment system coming out of, I believe, a centrifuge building. Can't remember. This is coming off an aeration basin event, and this is exactly what you might think it is. It's horrible. Horrible, horrible. So you've all seen this before. Developing a model, exact same principles, you're just dealing with air instead of water. So what we used with those samples was, those are our inputs for this model. We built a model grid, we gathered up all this met data and all these things that influence how plumes of smell is moved around. We built our boundary conditions, and then those samples that we took and that were analyzed, those go in there, and we developed the model that shows where they're going to go, how far they spread, how potent they are, all good stuff like that. It is. So that net data that I was talking about, we took about 5 years of net data, and we took it from, I think, 6 different stations. And actually on site they have their own meteorological, I guess, center. It's like a small one, but we use that. So you get those short little areas. That's what the local met data is going to give you. And then over at Oakland, they send up the air balloons, and they get met data. So you have all these different zones in your atmosphere that you have to model for. So you get a bunch of different met data. But those are your basic model boundaries. So this is what one source looks like. Our source is somewhere in there. Can't really see, it's a little zoomed out. But all these little contours are showing, so this is like a 1 DT contour. And DT is very, very tough to explain. You probably wouldn't smell 1 DT. 5 DT, you would probably get a little bit of smell. So all these little contours, I think this is 1,000, 250, and it keeps going out. This is basically like your zone that's going to be impacted by this one source. And granted, this isn't calibrated or validated, so this is kind of just a preliminary guess because we're still in the process of building this. Pardon? You don't have like a set interval, so we specified. We had like 1, 25, 50, 100, 250. Let me fix this last time. So yeah, you can specify that. It's pretty nice to be able to, you kind of want to gear it towards what your clients want to see. So it's nice to have that option. So the project now is still in the very basic planning stages for all aspects, not just odor. This is a huge, huge project, and kind of, 10-year project. We'll be out there for a while. It includes construction too, right? Perfect. So for this specific, for odor, we completed the winter sampling. That's our initial conditions for this model. We're going to go out there again in summer because when you get the high heat, you get actually worse smell. The model's still being worked on, and we're just kind of starting to delve into the design treatments a little bit, but it's very, very minimal so far. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions before I go?
So this project is part of the larger program called the program. And you'll see people avoid tax campaigns throughout the city. It's not just wastewater, which was one component, but we have stormwater projects and other projects throughout the city, and all of those together combined is about a $6.9 billion program over 30 years. This is one project that is probably not, but the project that collection system uses ongoing operation. And so there's a little, sewer bus here and there. It's just ongoing information and operation. But if it is a large project that they're doing specifically, so typically there's a nice big board that they have there offering this project. So it's recognized as part of any large city project. But if you have nothing like that. Yeah. It will stay combined, yeah, for sure. A few times, yeah, times on this that it will stay combined. But it's just upgrading infrastructure. And it's completed, everything, the systems that we call this project that started now, but it was the water system improvements has been going on for the last 5 to 7 years. They've had to do everything with respect to the water infrastructure to the city in the larger area. And so we're pretty much did everything we needed to do to make the water infrastructure seismically safe. So there's a large, which is for the city to come ahead in the future, but the plan is and make the water, wastewater, and all of the critical infrastructure that is seismically safe.
I don't know much about it.
They have a lot of, I don't know specifically about that, but like we're part of a few projects in Dubai and Middle East generally because yes, the big driver for them is it's getting clean water and also being disposal for the challenge in the arid region. So we have they actually invest more in desalination projects to actually get the fallout of the water and use that because they don't have fresh water. So desalination projects are really trending at high right now in the arid region.
Frustrating. I would say managing, so CH has an interesting way of doing things. You kind of manage your own workload. So like if someone approaches me and says, hey, do you want to do this project? I might say, oh no, I'm way too busy. Or I'll say, yeah, of course I want to. So managing what you say yes and no to is kind of frustrating because you may want to do something, but you can't devote your whole time to that. And then also when you take on way too much work, you're still expected to put it out. So putting in that extra time. But it has its good and bad parts. I don't know if you have something different.
Well, I mean, like a little bigger picture, like I think just it's a people business. Like all the projects that we talked about are city projects. And so more than as much as we're engineers and we just want to like design and draw and do all of those things, a big component of everything that we do and we have to think about is the people side of it. You know, it is the success or a project happening post this is the people saying yes or the people saying no. So it's being mindful of what to take and doing what's right for the community, given the time and the money that you have or a city has. And so I think just the dynamics of the client and us, like, you know, you have to, these are long projects, we're married for that time, you know, 10, 20, 30 years or so. So it's actually what we call it, you know, time relationships, because we need to manage the relationships and focus on the engineering. Yes, there's so much like software side to all of these engineering projects, which are not so evident. And so when it's relationships, things get, you know, there's challenges, and so it's managing all of that too. Yeah. Whoever wants to go, yeah, I think,
the six-amp routine.
Okay.
Go ahead and get started. We have a little 5 to 15 break. Go ahead and shoot started, okay? Next up, Natalie.
Yeah. So there are a lot of aspects in transportation, and later you'll hear a little bit more about the planning. But I'm a civil engineer, a transportation engineer, and I'm going to try to talk to you a little bit more about this. What should I be pointing at that? Ah, there we go. All right. So what do civil engineers do? They, build every structure you see. You can do skyscrapers, you can do smaller buildings, you can do bridges. I have a picture of the train. That would be more the train tracks, the design of where the train's going, how the infrastructure is going to work, not the actual train. That would be mechanical engineers. But some big things we have at CH, there's a bunch of stadiums. You could also do construction management. So if you don't necessarily want to do the design work, there's a whole other aspect, construction management, that can, some stuff inside, but some stuff being out there, making sure everything gets there on time. That's all part of civil engineering. And essentially, we're just trying to figure out how to make things in a safe and an efficient way. So that's a really basic bit. So how did I become a civil engineer? As your teacher mentioned, I was in this class 7 years ago. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do engineering. My grades and my test scores kind of fit more with the engineering acceptance rates when you're looking at the which colleges you can go to than with the College of Science, the Arts and Letters. So I thought, well, maybe I should try applying to those schools. I might be more likely to get in. If I want to switch careers later, I can. But while I was applying for that, I ended up taking this class. I thought it would help me decide, if engineering was a good option, and if so, what type of engineering, because there's just so many different options you can go with. So it actually did help me decide I wanted to do civil engineering. I didn't know at that time I wanted to do transportation. That came, later in college, but it kind of gave me a little direction. So some things that I thought about when I was deciding, and that maybe you guys would want to think about when you're deciding, is even before picking engineering, I thought, okay, I want to make money. Like, money isn't going to be the #1 thing I consider when I'm, choosing a career. But I'm going to be honest with myself. I'm going to want to have nice things. I'm not going to want to be struggling. I want to pick a profession that is going to, at least provide me with a pretty good income. So the salary, and this is a number I got off of salary.com today. So the average engineer 1 is $71,000 in San Francisco. That's maybe not going to be your starting salary. You'll probably be an engineer 1 for between 1 and 3 years, maybe 4 years. But that's what you're looking at in the first couple years after school. And that's another big thing for me. I didn't want to go to grad school. And it is an important thing to consider, is that I knew, it's like you have to put a lot of work into school. And I knew that when I finished that, I wasn't going to be ready to put a whole lot of work into 2 or 3 more years of school. So civil engineering in particular, of all the engineering, are one thing that you are very employable when you finish undergrad, and you're employable at a pretty good rate when you finish undergrad. So those were things that, that were important to me. And also job security. There is a huge need for civil engineers in the U.S. There's a huge shortage. My son came from India and came here and has done a huge, wonderful job. But as she was saying, in the Asian countries are producing more engineers than in the U.S. And so, they have their own projects. There's just a huge shortage of engineers, and so that really creates a lot of job security. This is something I found. So if you're going to look at this top 15 job growth, which you could kind of think of top 15 secure jobs, if you look at environmental engineer, environmental health and safety specialist, construction estimator, project engineer, civil engineer, structural engineer, transportation engineer. So it's 7 of the most secure jobs in the U.S. are in our industry. That means that not only are you going to be employable, be able to get a job, if you want to change jobs, there's going to be opportunities because all these jobs are growing. They're creating more jobs. It's definitely. I mean, for me, that was important that, I'd be able to finish college and have a job doing what I wanted to do, not end up having to do something completely unrelated, because you have to work really hard when you're in college. So I went to USC. This is talking a little bit about the fun things. You can see these pictures. That is of a concrete canoe. Has anyone heard of ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers? So they do a bunch of design competitions for the college groups. Every year, so one of them is a concrete canoe, and a lot of people think, okay, that's not going to float, but it can, because you can design the concrete, you can make lighter concrete, you can make it so it's less dense. You can make it so it holds up to different things. And so in this project, the students get to design that. Maybe if you're your first year of college, you might just go there and help pour the concrete, help do some labor type stuff. But after you've taken a concrete class, you might help design what are you going to put into the concrete, and how are you going to test it to make sure it's going to be strong enough, because you really don't want it to break. Especially if you're the one who's going to be in there. And the more fun thing is after you've made this, you compete. So all the schools in the Southwest region had to go to Hawaii for this competition this year. They just had to. And the students didn't end up having to pay for it. So part of the organization is that you go out and you get sponsors to help you do this. And engineering companies are actually quite willing to help sponsor these college programs. It really gives opportunity to, for leadership skills building. So all the students who helped build this had to fly to Hawaii and compete against, all the other colleges that had built this. Then it wasn't just the concrete canoe. There was also a steel bridge where it's going to be, the competition was based on, how heavy was your bridge, how much weight could it hold. There was a seismic competition where you had to build a 10-foot structure that had, various levels, like a scale model of a building, and they were going to put it on a shake table that simulated an earthquake. And, they were going to see who could last the longest. So they're going to ruin your structure. But maybe, they're going to weigh that also, who can last the longest or whose is the lightest, and all those things are going to come into play. And it's a really good opportunity for you to get hands-on experience. You take classes, you learn how to do all the structural stuff, but it's kind of more fun to go with your hands dirty and to go, build something and see if you've built it better than UCLA, for example, or better than Cal, and just so that's a fun aspect. Also, I thought we had really fun field trips. We got to sometimes go to construction sites and walk around places that the public isn't normally allowed to. You get to see the process of things being built, closed down areas, and so those were all really, really cool things. And the classes I talked about, oh yeah, go ahead.
Like, where do you know where the college are? How far can you go into
You're probably going to go pretty far into planning because another aspect of it is that you've had to put the effort into getting the money. I mean, it's not your money, but you're sending people out or you're going out and making presentations to companies to try to get them to give you money to finance this. So you probably can't afford to waste the material. And that's another thing that, it's good experience because when you're working, you're not going to waste the materials. You're going to plan it, measure twice, cut once type of thing. And you also want, if you just throw something together, it might look good, but you have no idea what kind of forces, for the seismic building, for example. You have no idea what kind of forces it can take. But if you do the calculations, then you're reasonably sure it's going to be able to last up, up to certain things. So it's not just something you show up and do. It's a year-long project. The competition's in the spring. You start in the fall. It's a year-long project, and you have to write reports about it, and you have to, like I said, you have to give presentations. I mean, not every single person, but the overall is a really good, experience for when you're going to be in the working world. Anything else? All right. So another thing that helped me choose engineering, not just the money and the job security, but I really do believe it's a job where you help people. By creating safe places and safe situations, that's going to prevent a lot of injury, a lot of things going wrong. The general public was probably going to undervalue everything when that goes smoothly, but in reality, you save tons of lives, and you save, when you build a building that withstands an earthquake, that doesn't, cause problems. There's also a lot that you have an opportunity to work with disaster relief. So, when there's Hurricane Sandy and, or in New Orleans, with Katrina, every time there's an earthquake, anything, they need to have structural engineers who can go into these buildings, assess the damage before people can get back to normal life. They need if there's an overpass that has collapsed, they need someone who can design really quickly so that you can get that freeway up and running so people can get back to their normal lives. So that's an aspect of it. Disaster relief is an aspect. I haven't personally experienced it, but it's appealing because you get to use, what your passion is, and you get to help people, and you get to help them in times of need. So that's cool. And here's a picture of me on the new Santa Ana Bay Bridge while it was being built. I didn't actually work on this project, but I got to take a tour. So we were part of the construction management team, and that is, making sure the materials get delivered on time. Like if you think about how much the equipment costs, if you're going to spend $1,000 a day renting equipment and your materials aren't there, well, who's paying for that? Who's paying for that to happen? So we were part of the construction management team, making sure that the other disciplines could all work together, getting things on time, getting it going once construction started. I also have worked on a bus rapid transit project. I don't know if any of you guys have heard that they're in the planning stages of that on Geneva. And essentially with bus rapid transit, there's several things that make it bus rapid transit, but one of them is a dedicated bus lane. So in this case, the bus isn't waiting in traffic. They're not stopped. The bus gets all green lights. They haven't had this in the past in Santa Clara County, but the rear door boarding. I don't know if any of you guys take Muni and noticed the change when you were able to start getting on the back door of Muni and how much faster it made the whole process. You didn't have to wait in line and pay one at a time. It was just like get on and get quickly. Don't stop at the bus stop as long. Get going. So that's one of the aspects they have for bus rapid transit. And this project here will be the first one in the Bay Area. This is one picture of it. It doesn't have a dedicated lane the whole way, but it will get greens the whole way. So there's something on the bus that the driver has that the lights will change when the buses come. Yeah. Well, but if you're in your own lane, if the bus has its own lane and it gets a green, but you have cars in front of you, you can't really follow it. So the idea with these are really to try to make the bus more appealing. If it's faster to get somewhere on the bus than it is in a car, you're so much more likely to take a bus. I mean, whoever wants to try to drive in downtown San Francisco, it's a mess. Whoever wants to try to park in downtown San Francisco. So San Francisco has much better transportation options than other parts of the Bay Area, and they're trying to make steps to, bring it up. This is a bus facility where, it's fast loading and keep going. This is at, I think, the East Ridge Transit Mall down in San Jose. So it's all going to be on the route of this same bus, and that's something I've been working on, helping the grading of the road so it's a comfortable ride, and helping the bus stop, helping design the bus stops so they're easy to get around, and so that the neighborhoods don't, get upset with what's going on. But yeah, and so here are some of the things that our company has worked on. If you want to, you have the opportunity to travel at this in this field. There's some really big, world-recognized projects. The Stadium for the London Olympics. Not only did they help with the project management with that, and then that was a huge project where they took an essentially toxic, huge plot of land, and they, cleaned it up, and they built stuff, and they made it, it was landfill, and it wasn't structurally sound to build on, and they did all of that. The Panama Canal, I might have some. If I could use it. Hold on. No. Maybe. Hold on. So here are some cool pictures. Oh, nope, that is not picture. Okay. So really you can work on things that are, much smaller and much more focused, like, a bus line. Yeah, these are some cool pictures of projects. Or you can work on massive projects, like in the Middle East where they're building massive amounts. There's, whole cities that are full of skyscrapers. There's, yeah, and you said, the chance to work on a brand new water treatment system. You can do that, and you can do things where you're going to be working on renovations, or how do you fit things into what's existing? How do you, make this the best project, but there's all this infrastructure that's already there that you have to kind of puzzle pieces around. But this is a picture of the Panama Canal, where they are widening the canal and lengthening. I don't know what it's called. So the lock. So they're lengthening the lock, so they're going to be able to fit larger ships through the Panama Canal, which is, then starting tons of projects where they need to be able to fit larger ships at, the Oakland and the Long Beach and the LA ports, and even in Costa Rica, they're trying to redesign their ports so they're going to be able to fit these bigger ships that are going to be able to deliver more cargo. So those are some of the things in civil engineering. Does anyone have any questions about it? No? All right.
That's the number.
Well, okay. Great. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew. I am probably the individual with the least tenure at CH. I've been there for about 6 months now. Started back in the fall after having moved down here from Vancouver, Canada. I'm also the only person, I guess, that will speak to you today that's not an engineer. So I'm the token non-engineer. I'm a transportation planner, and I do a fair bit of my work with engineers, but I've got a slightly different sort of set of projects that I work on, and I'll sort of walk you through what I do and why I still think engineering is kind of cool and important. All right, so a small bit about myself, since I guess that's sort of how we do this. I actually did a degree in finance, sort of finance and economics as undergrad, and then did a dual master's degree at MIT in transportation science and city planning. So I've got kind of a weird combination of activities that I've undertaken before hopping into my career. And work experience is also sort of an interesting one for me. I've done kind of a wide range of things that sort of all over the map as well. Transportation planning, policy analysis, financial analysis are typically what I work on. I've actually done 7 months of hurricane recovery in Louisiana back in 2007, which was kind of an interesting ordeal. I did the very unsexy part of hurricane recovery. I did financial analysis for the state of Louisiana to figure out how to pay for hurricane recovery, which was somewhat challenging. I've worked for a trucking company. I had a stint for a while where I actually flew all over the US and inspected school buses. My job was to fly somewhere, roll under the bus, and inspect school buses. I have no technical know-how of vehicles, but I was expected to inspect these vehicles. It was actually, to be fair, it was to ensure the presence of a vehicle sort of particulate matter collector on the exhaust pipe. So these schools were expected to retrofit their school buses to collect the exhaust smoke and then clean out the filter every so often. We were expected to go out there and just check and make sure they were doing this, they weren't experiencing any problems, and to help them improve their cleaning approaches if they needed to. I once sort of sat down, was really interested in bridge conditions across the U.S. So I wrote a paper on how the U.S. federal government could change the way they evaluate bridge conditions, and ended up going to an annual conference called the Transportation Research Board annual meeting, which is often where transportation folks, planners, engineers, and so on give presentations on weird transportation topics. And so I was invited to come speak to a group of professionals there. And I wrote my thesis on carpooling. In fact, the concept of what Uber and Lyft and Sidecar have turned into, which is sort of dynamic matching of riders and drivers. I did that about 5 years ago, kind of just as this idea was sort of gaining traction. So the only reason I bring up this sort of wide array of work experience is if you don't quite know what you want to do yet, don't worry about it. Life is such that you will hop around, you'll try different things, and the key is to just focus on what it is you like to do, and you'll eventually find a career and have fun doing it. So I'm not an engineer, but I solve problems by relying on engineers, planners, economists, you name it, to sort of come up with solutions for what clients are looking for. Dreamers, in fact, too. So I guess the key is just realize you're going to work with a whole bunch of really interesting and different people. And always just try and keep in the back of your mind what different types of people are going to be trying to sort out, whether they're engineers or economists or what. Oh yeah, questions. Okay, show of hands. How many people own a car? Oh wow, okay, so more than I would have thought. Interesting. And before we get to the second question, I actually came up with another one before I get to the second one. How much combined fuel tax do you in California pay when you fill your car up? So when you go and fill up your car, it says it's $3.85 a gallon to fill your car up. How much of that is tax collected by local municipalities, states, and the federal government? Any takers? Go cents. Instead of a percentage, how much in cents? No. Not 9/10. It's higher than that. I'll give you that. 39.5 cents a gallon in California. So approximately 10%. So 9% wasn't far off, but it actually is fixed at 39 cents. So even if gas is selling for $1 a gallon, it would be 40% of the cost of fuel at that point. That amount of money, I'm not sure about California specifically, but at the federal level, hasn't changed in 20-odd years. And so I sort of frame that going into, I guess, what is second question here, but really the third question. Is decreasing fuel consumption a good or a bad thing? I'll take answers. Someone throw out a position, how they feel about that. Lots of good things. Why is it a good thing? Sustainability, the environment, emissions, good. Peak oil. True, yep, if there's less demand, typically price should follow. Good, okay, so we come up with sort of a majority, go for it. Right, so that's actually where I was going with this, is it's not as clean cut a sort of pro, yes, it's a good thing, as it may seem. As consumption in fuel drops, because we're all driving more efficient vehicles, or we're using Muni more, that 39 cents a gallon goes down in terms of total revenue that the state or the federal government collects to pay for things. And what do you typically build with that money? You repair roads, you redo bridges, all infrastructure that has sort of a 40 to 50 year lifespan that was built after the Second World War in the 50s and 60s, which was 50 to 60 years ago. But a lot of this infrastructure is sort of coming up for renewal. So a fair bit of what I do is trying to think through forward-looking sort of planning. How do trends like decreasing revenue and fuel consumption affect what we can build or how much we can afford? So I'm going to walk you through a project that I worked on recently, about a year ago, up when I was still in Canada. Sorry, questions for that? Mm-hmm. It should going forward, but a lot of the wear and tear that's occurred on the road has happened over the last 50 years. So there's often a need to replace that structure. For roads, it's less important. You could potentially narrow a road, build fewer lanes. But for something like a bridge is a very binary structure. It's either there or it's not. And so typically if a bridge sort of comes up and needs to be fixed, it's a large capital investment that you need to make for the next 50 years. And so that actually brings up another good point, though, which is if we're seeing a decrease in demand for driving, how big a bridge do you need? Do you really need another 8-lane bridge, or could you build a 6-lane bridge? These are the sorts of interesting questions that planners often get asked, and we have to come up with different ways of trying to think that through so that the engineers can go and design it and help build it. Okay, so Vancouver. Anyone know where Vancouver is? Has anyone been to Vancouver? Okay, good. Good. Vancouver is this sort of interesting region. It's got a very dense downtown core, lots of sort of beautiful office towers. But the sort of further out reaches of Vancouver is actually a large floodplain with great soils. There's actually a lot of agriculture within the sort of greater region. So very different geography within the Vancouver region. Remind me again, how much tax do you guys collect here in California for total fuel? 40 cents a gallon? Vancouver has the highest gas tax of any jurisdiction in North America. Vancouver collects $1.85 a gallon just in fuel tax, which most people have a hard time swallowing that. Fuel prices in Vancouver earlier this week were just shy of $6 a gallon. So it's quite a bit different. The one sort of interesting benefit that that creates is 70 cents a gallon of dedicated money goes directly to transit. And so you have this sort of source that you can use to invest in networks like Muni or your bus system to really try and encourage people to not drive as much. And as such, as you'll see, this has actually seemed to have a bit of a shift in how people behave in Vancouver. Sorry, was there a question? They can. Typically in North America, Vancouver is the same. They don't do that. So as market prices fluctuate, the tax is just a fixed portion on top. But in some ways, that's actually not bad either, because a highly fluctuating fuel price also tends to encourage people to drive less, take more transit, walk, cycle more. And so one of the tasks I was sort of asked to do in Vancouver was, our fuel tax is declining, much like the rest of North American cities. Help us try and understand what that might be about and what we sort of are facing going forward. So I started, like any good planner, and sort of saw what data we had available. And when I asked for how much fuel was sold in Vancouver over the last 2 decades, that was the chart that I was given. This is one of the most surreal charts I've ever come across in my life. This supposedly is how much fuel was purchased by month in Vancouver. And now it turns out that the backside of that chart, the last of the 4 years from 2009 onwards, they changed the method by which they measure fuel sales. So that's just a complete anomaly. But nevertheless, you know, again, good planner, you sort of find this out as you go. We had to go and use a second data source that we ended up having to purchase to really sort of validate what was actually going on. And by the time we sort of got that second data source and overlaid it, this is what we were looking at. And when you sort of cleaned up the sort of roughness in the data, that was the trend that we were looking at over the course of 20, 25 years. And so the predominant theory in North America, and especially in Vancouver, was, oh, don't worry about it, it's just the recession. After 2008, as employment picks up again, everything will be fine. This was a really helpful chart for political decision makers because we more or less pointed out to them that the peak in total fuel consumption in Vancouver happened in 2001. No one had really sort of clued into that, and it had been flat for about a decade and had been declining for about 3 to 4 years. So this was a revenue source that people are now slowly starting to see is not that sustainable in terms of generating a lot of money for transportation investment. So if you're looking backwards historically and you're seeing data like this, what's the next sort of question that comes to mind if you're thinking critically about this kind of problem? Where are you going to get more money? Even before that happens, how much have you been assuming you're going to get going forward? As an agency, typically with projects that take 10 or 20 years to build, you've had to budget money out into the next 5 or 10 years. How much money have you assumed that you're going to be getting from this revenue source? Well, that was the next question. So this is sort of a slightly odd chart, but will be somewhat helpful when you see what I'm doing. I took the amount of money that the agency was receiving per penny of gas tax. So for every extra cent of gas tax that they put out there, how much money were they actually receiving? And sure enough, since about 2002, it had either been flat or declining. The forecast, however, was not quite so good. The agencies themselves had been sort of hoping that the amount of revenue that they would receive from this source would continue to increase. And this is based on sort of their belief that population and employment growth in the region would drive more demand for driving and fuel consumption, which is not dissimilar to the logic that a lot of agencies in North America use. What turns out has happened is that that's not necessarily a trend that's holding any longer. So I worked with a group of economists and at least one engineer to come up with a slightly better forecast for how you would actually forecast this going forward. We came up with sort of a provisional preliminary estimate as to where we thought this might go, which unfortunately was actually quite a substantial drop. And unfortunately, we left about a $600 million hole in the organization's budget. This was a challenging discussion to have with the leadership team of an agency. And this is actually one of the skills that I would say you should keep in the back of your mind. Is even in engineering, whether you're doing civil, mechanical, whether you're a planner, whether you're an economist, chances are really good that you're going to have to go to public meetings and sell an idea or stand in someone else's shoes and try and understand what they're sensing. Convincing someone to adopt this new forecast meant putting off at least 2 major projects in Vancouver. That was a really tough sell for people. So it requires really sort of knowing what you're doing, being confident in your analysis, but also sort of predicting how people are going to react to different information. So I'll finish with this, which is great. Well, does this have to do with engineering again? Why are we going through this? I'll leave you with this. The skills that engineering will provide you with, strong analytics, critical thinking, thinking creatively, and that last one that I mentioned too, being able to stand in someone else's shoes, whether you're a planner, an engineer, an economist, an elected official, someone who lives on the street that you're about to dig up for the next 5 years, stand in everyone's shoes and try and understand what's going on. And engineering really provides you with a broad base of those skills that will help you in just about any of these situations. So whether you want to design bridges, code software for video games, work at a bank, answer policy questions like I do, or frankly even just writing a book, if you want to become a writer or a playwright later on in life, going through engineering is not going to cut off any of those opportunities for you. If you chose to go the opposite direction and you wanted to study literature right now, you may find that if you want to design bridges later on in life, that will cause you some trouble. So don't shortchange yourself. I mean, if you're willing to go for it, take in all of those skills that you think you might need now, and then make that decision as you go forward. I think some of the sort of jobs that I've sort of highlighted previously had nothing to do with finance or economics or planning or anything else, but they were a fun and interesting sort of career for a short while. I decided that, you know, in some of those cases that wasn't quite what I wanted to do, and you move on. So give yourself the greatest possible chance of success. Give it a try. But with that in mind, keep all of your interests in mind. Don't necessarily do engineering because your parents did engineering, your friends are doing it. Do it because you want to. I mean, if it's really what excites you, go after it. The key is to do something that you really enjoy doing, and then figure out how to get someone to pay you for that. It really is that sort of simple in life. So I'm not going to give you the hard pitch on engineering, but I think it is a really good career opportunity. It leaves a lot of doors open to you, and it allows you to go in a lot of different directions depending on what you want to do. So I think I'm only a minute over, so that was good and quick. Sorry, say that again? It's very project specific. So in this particular case, I had several engineers that helped me understand, ironically enough, how fuel and energy gets moved through the Vancouver region. So in this case, not a lot. The economics team, this is my key group of friends in